Everything's working today. Yep. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm John Miglash. The WDMA. We're going to be talking about measurement and ROI today. But first, let's get over to Tom Fishburne, who says, do something. Don't just sit there. Do something that looks like... Don't just sit there. Do something that looks like we're being productive. Okay, so... And the key word here is looks like we're doing something productive. Notice the graph. Okay. He's got another one not too long ago that said, we're going to keep meeting until we figure out why nothing ever gets done around here. Which is a similar thought. Okay. And, it reminded me of some of the complaints when many people at Twitter got laid off. It's like, where are we going to find another place to work that has a bar? And, well, you could work at a bar. But you're not supposed to drink from the bar when you're working at the bar. Okay, we've got a Zoom meeting coming up. And I just sent out an email blast to everybody that's ever, as far as I know, ever tiptoed near the WDMA. So check your inbox, and if it's going to spam, it's probably because I put a picture in it and I put a bunch of links, so it kind of is spam. I mean, in the filter sense. I don't know how to fix that. Put it in your contacts or something. Anyway, it'll be at 3 p.m. on March. I put March 38th on the thing below. March 38th. Well, no, it'll be the 28th. I'll have to fix that, but it's fixable. It was late at night when I was working on that. So next week, Tuesday, just keep that in mind. If you go to WDMA.org, up in the upper left, upper right, there's a little picture, and you can click on that and get right to the registration. And inside the registration, I think there's a link that just puts it in your calendar for you, especially if it's a Google Calendar link. I don't know if Apple can read those, but I hope it is. Okay, so Tom starts out there. Tom starts out with, there's a counterintuitive Buddhist line that's stuck with me. Don't just do something. Sit there. Yeah, that's an interesting line. I grew up with a very busy man as my father, and if I were sitting down at the piano and practicing, or if I were reading a book, and I typically read books like The Confessions of St. Augustine or Vatican II. I was searching at the time, but I'd be reading books like that. It wasn't just Doc Savage, which I also read, but that was, when I was like in 5th grade. But if he saw me with a book, or he saw me at the piano, he would make me go out in the backyard and pick up sticks or something, because he was definitely not into sitting around. You better get working, and you better look like you're working, whether you're working or not. So I worked really hard at looking busy. So there's it's particularly useful in times of uncertainty or even panic to when the temptation is to follow the herd or take action for the sake of taking action. Sometimes the best action to take on a situation is no action at all. And of course, that's probably what your CFO, this occurred to me when I was reading it, that's probably what your CFO is thinking in terms of the marketing budget. Does it really matter? Wouldn't we be better off just saving the money? So don't let your CFO see this cartoon, is what my advice would be. And I have to note that Tom wrote me back last week, and I really appreciate that. I don't know if Tom ever sees the damage I do to his cartoon, but anyway, this one's a dangerous one. You for sure don't want to send it to your CFO. For me, it's a reminder to respond, not to react. Boy, that's words for life. It's also an antidote to the culture of busyness. that psychologist and Kellogg professor Adam Waits explored this in this month's Harvard Business Review. He writes, busyness has become a status symbol. People also consider those who exert high effort to be morally admirable regardless of their output. Yeah, okay, I kind of probably have bought into that in life. I don't know, it's hard to say. You know, it's hard to say. I think I've had a lot of output. Now the question is whether that generated any return on investment. Well, that's a different question. That's a different question. You know, Dwight D. Eisenhower famously framed in a 1954 speech. Before I was born, I did not listen to that speech live. I have two kinds of problems, the urgent and the important. The urgent are not important, and the important are never urgent. And I learned that when I was just starting out as a marketing consultant. I was reaching the deadline on my master's thesis. And, you know, I was single, so was everybody else pretty much in the office. And, you know, we'd go out for a beer and just, you know, talk about stuff. And, you know, it was, and I was really needing to work on my master's thesis. It needed work. And, no one ever said, go home and work on your master's thesis. It's really important. No, it was all, let's go out for a beer. Oh, you can work on that master's tomorrow. You can work on it anytime. And I did learn that the urgent doesn't wait, and the important doesn't urge. It just sits there and says, well, you can do it if you want. The most important things, no one says, oh, you need to do that. You need to go start that company. You need to go meet with the bank. You need to do your taxes. No one ever, well, my wife says that. But, you know, what I mean is that the culture doesn't really urge you on to the urgent. So Johns Hopkins professor Meng Zhu explored this urgency bias in 2018 study, and it said humans are prone to spend time on tasks that merely seem urgent instead of tasks that are not pressing but ought to carry more weight. Absolutely right. And here's this was an interesting cartoon from a little while ago. You know, I pointed out to climate change people that they've only been measuring it for the last few months. No, the last couple of years, mainly. You know, I think the thermometers in Central Park go back to the 1700s, I think. But that's still not very long in the grand scheme of things, right? If you believe that the Earth is 4 billion years old, that's not even a tick of the clock. And if it's a pure cycle, if it's a pure sine wave, which is kind of this graph, just up and down and up and down. If you look at it here, you know, that's one kind of trend. If you look at it here, that's another kind of trend. There is no trend. It's absolutely straight line, right? Which means you're right on track. I hope it is. But whatever it is, and if you're watching it minute by minute, and this is just 1 day time span, because it says sales are up today, sales are down today. You know, you go nuts. And so often our measurement scale is off. We don't appreciate. You know, I'm watching the ocean race, and they keep giving the speed of the boats, and I believe it's a speed of the boats like real time right now, which is maybe a second or two of a time scale. And the boats have widely different speeds. You know, one is going 13 knots and one is going 20 knots. And they're right next to each other after 5,000 miles of sailing. And you know what? Tomorrow they're also right next to each other. Now, if their differential is really 7 knots, they would be so far apart. Well, after a day of sailing, they'd be 140 miles apart. But they're not, because they're going essentially the same speed. And one's slamming into a wave and stopping, and one's riding down a wave and accelerating. And it's so stupid, and I've written to them many times. You know, how you measure makes a lot of difference. So Anyway, thanks for that. Oh no, here's my favorite one that he put up. I'm glad we're all aligned. Yes, always be aligned, but you need to make sure somebody knows where you're going. And in this case, nobody hears back from the guys that went off the edge. They just follow the tail. I think that's the way most of life is. Broad is the way and wide is the gate, and many find it that lead to destruction. There you go. Okay, this was a nice article. Direct Mail Advertising Global Marketing Report 2023. And apparently I uploaded the thing without all the highlights. But anyway, it says that it's going to go up a couple of percent in the next year, 2.4%, and about 4% over the next 5 years, which isn't that great. One of the things I noticed, and not everybody would, is that Gunderson Direct is mentioned along with R.R. Donnelly, Velasquez, Nippon, Hart Hanks, Quad Graphics, Senvio, Hibbert. I've never heard of Hibbert. I've never heard of these guys either. But way to go, Mike Gunderson. There's some other players I thought might be bigger, but apparently Gunderson chimed in and got their name in the lights. Direct marketing, this is mainly when they're talking about direct marketing, the budget, it's not mostly postage, I don't think. It doesn't seem to include postage, which could double the numbers. So that makes it. So if you don't think 75 billion is that big over here, then, well, throw in the postage, okay? The DMA used to always include the spend, how much you were selling. And that was always funny because you might be driving traffic to a retail store or something. It's largest in North America. There's a lot of read rate on direct mail. It tends to have a longer shelf life. It's a nice article, worth a read. It'll be up on wdma.org in a few minutes, along with all the other show notes. You just have to subscribe, which is free, and you'll also be more likely to get those spam emails when we're actually having something fun. Okay, here's how companies are measuring their ROI from JC Lupus, marketingcharts.com, and he's citing the Lob report that Lob graciously sent over to me, and Ms. Courvoisier, Courvoisier, that's her name, and I always have this story in my head about Courvoisier because at one of the DMAs down in Dallas, I was staying at the Adolphus, wonderful hotel, if it's still there. Old World, and we jumped in a cab together, and because there was a shortage, and the guy I was with said, "You pay the cab and I'll buy you a drink." I said, "Okay." So we got to the bar, and I said, "I'll have a Courvoisier," which was at least double the cab. I don't think he thought a young kid like me would know a word like Courvoisier anyway. So direct mail ROI measurement tactics. And I was hoping this was about measurement of actual ROI because it's such a broad range. And one of the keys of consulting is speaking the language of the client. And they're almost never two are the same. So this one just says individual customer activity within a specific period of time. I'm guessing that's more like matchback because you can measure, you know where you sent it. And if you get an order from that same place within a certain amount of time, then that would make the most sense. QR code doesn't generally, unless it's a personalized URL, unless you combine these two, that really doesn't help you much. You can tell it's from the overall campaign, but you can't tell that it's from a particular individual, which is the advantage of the personalized URL and the matchback analysis, okay? But it can help you. If you get the QR code, you can, and usually it's usually captured a link to a landing page or to a special page, but it could just be a trackable QR code. And it goes down and down there, and there's all kinds of ways to track. Okay, there's just all kinds. But direct mail is said to have the highest ROI, but many organizations are failing to measure, which is funny because the old definition is measurable. Doesn't say you measure. It just says you could measure on the definition of direct marketing. But this survey, and I did follow up with Ms. Crevassier, and she wrote back to me and she said, Compare Media, she told me this, surveyed 250 businesses that all had at least 1,000 employees and did not, and weren't necessarily lob clients. And a high percentage of them, like 2/3 of them, say that they use direct mail, which was really interesting. I wondered if it was a good sample set. Sounds like a pretty good sample set. So I was impressed with that, and that isn't in this article, but it's something that I followed up with later, and so did she, and that was good. Okay, only about 1/3 of the marketers surveyed were able to determine the ROI. Now, just collecting the QR code clicks does not tell you the ROI, right? What it tells you is the number of clicks on your direct mail piece taking you to the landing page. That does not tell you how many went through all the way through the shopping cart and placed the order, right? It tells you clicks. It's not what we usually would call response rate because it's not orders, okay? If you have a dedicated response landing page, then you can at least know these came from your mailing. But even if you know the total sales, in my book, that's not return on investment. That's sales return on ad spend. Okay? And I've had many marketers look me in the eye and tell me, well, we got more sales than the cost of our advertising, so we broke even. 100%. No, nothing. Because you have a cost of goods, you have an order processing cost. You have overhead as a marketing department. There's your salaries, right? And so ROI has to include those costs, I think. In terms of a return on investment, no investment banker would say, well, I bought the stock for $1,000 and I sold it for $2,000, so I got a $2,000 return on investment. No, you didn't. Your investment was $1,000. You got to take that out. Okay, so the minimum of return on investment would be take out your costs, right? Okay, now ROI can be a lot more complicated than that, right? You can take in the cost of money. You can take in which Martin Bear always put in, and Earl Hogan. They always put in the cost of money so that there's a time differential. You can have that. And what about lifetime value? What about the return on investment over the next year? What about the repeat orders that come in? That could be relevant, absolutely. So ROI is a lot more complicated than just tracking, and I think few marketers have any idea what they're talking about when they talk about ROI. If you don't know, or if you're a CFO listening to this and you're sure your marketing team doesn't know, give us a call, join the Zoom at next Tuesday, not tomorrow, but the next after that. And let's talk about it, because this is a hugely important issue. And as we saw here, only about 1/3 actually even track the orders. And I wouldn't call the orders generated necessarily the return on investment. I would say that the incremental lift is the return on investment. In other words, what would you have gotten if you did nothing? So what you should really do is you should hold out like your customers. And this article goes on to say customer mailings get the best return. Okay, so what would happen since you've already got an email program going and you've already got Google pay-per-click going and you've got orders coming in and your client and your customers are reordering? What's the difference between what you paid for your direct mail and what you got? And that's the real return on investment. Okay, that amount of money. So when we mail the customer file, a $1 catalog, we need to get a 300% return on investment EBITDA in order to get an incremental lift. Well, that's what we're measuring, actually. When we're really measuring ROI, we're measuring incremental lift. So we say, okay, a customer we mailed to spent an extra $10 for that $1. A customer that we didn't mail to spent $10 less. So that $1 that we spent per customer generated $10 of sales, which is then taking out all the costs, about $3 of incremental EBITDA profit. That is real ROI. And if you don't do it that way, you're whistling Dixie and your CFO is right to laugh at you. Have a great day. Like and share. Your friends will know you're smart. Bye-bye.